Welcome you all for a critical analysis of The Cultivation of Anxiety, King Lear and His Heirs by Stephen Greenblatt. Stephen Greenblatt. Stephen Greenblatt is an American scholar and literary historian. He is the father of New Historicism and coined the term New Historicism, which he often refers to as cultural poetics. New Historicism is a literary theory which aims to understand history and literature through its cultural context. It concentrates on understanding works of literature within their historical, social, and cultural contexts. New Historicism was first developed in 1980s, primarily through the works of Stephen Greenblatt, and gained widespread influence in the 1990s. New Historicism opposes the ideas of New Criticism, that is, New Historicists begin a critical reading of novel by explaining themselves, their backgrounds, and their prejudices. They look at many elements outside of the work and reject reading the text in isolation. Stephen Greenblatt is considered to be an expert in the field of Renaissance studies and is particularly noted for his analysis of William Shakespeare's works. He is also the co-founder of the literary cultural journal called Representations, which often publishes articles by new historicists. His most popular work is Will in the World, published in the year 2004, a biography of Shakespeare that has won the bestseller list. He had also won Pulitzer Prize for the non-fiction book, The Serb, How the World Became Modern, published in the year 2011. About the text. The essay, The Cultivation of Anxiety, King Lear and His Heirs, was first published in the year 1990 in the book Learning to Curse. The book Learning to Curse is a collection of essays in early modern culture. The essay, Cultivation of Anxiety, is a typical example of new historicist reading and studies the historical, social, and cultural context of the Elizabethan period during which the play King Lear was published. Greenblatt in the essay compares the terrifying failure of the 17th century play King Lear with the 19th century intense familial love article written by Reverend Francis Wayland. This article of Wayland was first published in the American Baptist Magazine of 1831. The article discussed about 15 months old toddler Lincoln Wayland, the son of Francis Wayland. Shakespeare's play King Lear had been written before Wayland's article, and Greenblatt tracks the directionality of literary time, institutional changes, and the difference between two historical situations. The Love Test of Reverend Francis Wayland. Greenblatt opens the essay with a long passage from an early 19th century magazine article of Francis Wayland. We are told that Francis Wayland was a mid-19th century American clergyman, and his article was clearly about the technique of child rearing and explained how Francis Wayland subdued the temper of his 15-month-old son. The boy one day began to cry violently and was so obstinate that he had fasted up to 36 hours. One could consider Wayland's child rearing technique as so cruel as Wayland demands his son's voluntary submission to his feeding ritual. In the sense, Wayland expected his son should take food directly from him and come to him voluntarily as an act of love and not forced order. The boy finally understood the love test of Wayland and submitted to his father. Wayland felt success in his love test, and he prays that the effect that was produced remains with him a lifetime. The love test of King Lear. Greenblatt argues that the root of this familial love is the product of a long historical process of Shakespeare's England. Lear too wishes to be the object and the sole recipient of his child's love. We all know the love test of King Lear, where he demanded a public contest of love among his daughters, and whomever declares to love him most gets the most land. Thinking of his favorite daughter, Cordelia will declare to love him the most, then other elder daughters, Goneril and Regan. For Greenblatt, both the love test of Wayland and Lear are the consequence of a number of historicized anxieties in society. Love anxiety. The age of Shakespeare demanded the greatest attention, instruction, and discipline. Thus, Elizabethan and Jacobean theatre imposed restraints and exercised shaping power. Greenblatt points out that the youths of Cordelia's age group between sexual maturity in the mid teens or about 15 and social maturity at about 26 were under considerable cultural scrutiny in the early 1600s. This scrutiny or careful examination focused on a woman's transition between her parents and her husband's guardianship. This transition involved the transference of love, power, as well as property and wealth. During this transference, the father might feel some anxiety at the possibility that he would no longer be the object of his love. In such a way, one can understand Lear's desire to be the object, perhaps the sole object of his daughter's affections. Property anxiety. The transference of property as part of a marriage dowry could be a very strong source of anxiety because it prevents one from being displaced by an ungrateful daughter and a ruthless son in law. During medieval and early modern, fathers undertook to protect themselves after retirement. Such situations arouse most frequently in Shakespeare's Class of Virgin too. Threatened with a drastic loss of status and authority, parents facing retirement expects to provide food, clothing, and shelter. This fear of displacement and eviction, Greenblatt claims, is seen in King Lear too. Lear's division of the kingdom to dispose his property equally among his daughters shows his property anxiety. Lear too is seen outdoors for food, shelter amidst tempest. Salutory anxiety. Royal power also involved covering up with the language of love and blandishments of flattery. And Greenblatt calls this a salutary anxiety, that is, the benefit and pleasure generated from authority. Shakespeare's King Lear emphasizes Lear's claim to unbounded power and royal authority. King Lear incorporates several powerful and complex representations of salutary anxiety, and the most notable of which is the love test itself. Lear wishes his full value or power to be recognized. So he stages the love test to enforce his recognition. Greenblatt states that Lear uses the love test to banish his own royal anxiety by cultivating the anxieties of his daughters. The consequence is that Goneril and Regan understand that Lear's requirement for love involves a performance. On the other hand, Cordelia refuses to misrepresent her love through performance, so she is in turn rejected as unloving. For Greenblatt, love test could be successful if conditional social world agreement is replaced by child's lifelong love. This is evident that upon the death of Francis Wayland, Lincoln Wayland collaborated in writing a reverential 2-volume biography of his father. This is considered as a son's final monument to familial love. Lear, by contrast, dies, still looking on his daughter's lips for the words that she never speaks. Thank you.